Hey there, folks. Welcome to Broadband Deployment News. The Fiber Broadband Association and the NTCA have released their third version of their Broadband Infrastructure Playbook. Be right back. We'll take a look at that. And again, thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Quorum with Broadband Deployment News. So the Fiber Broadband Association and the NTCA, along with Cartesian, have created this Broadband Infrastructure Playbook, and this is actually the third version of this. They came out with an early one, version one, and then back in May of 2022, they came out with one right after the BEAD NOFO came out, and they kind of updated it with that. And this third version here covers some things that are of importance right now for the eligible entities that would be in BEAD. That would be your states and territories, as well as anybody else that's going to be subgrantees under that, as well as frankly, community organizations, nonprofits should all kind of know these things. So I thought I'd just make sure that you were aware that this was a new resource that was out from these organizations. I'll go through it real quickly just to give you a few highlights. And in the description of this, I link to where you can get this PDF. So see here just a couple of things, kind of background. NTCA and FBA published Playbook 2.0 shortly after the NTIA released the BEAD notice of funding opportunity, again, back in May of 2022. Because now states are racing to complete by the end of the year their initial proposals that will govern funding, distribution, and selection of potential partners. NTCA and FBA are therefore excited that the modules contained in Playbook version 3 build upon the implementation recommendations from prior releases by focusing on key issues and providing ground level analysis and advice that we believe will be most helpful as the race to implement BEAD hits a critical stage. So again, it is getting closer to where states are going to be. They have till the end of this year, basically, just right at the end of the year, where they need to get their initial proposals in. A lot of them have already, but they need to get those proposals in, need to get their challenge processes going. So a lot of that's covered in here. It's basically, there's just I think it's 3 modules. We'll see as we go through here. So you've got module 1, permitting access to state and local rights of way and infrastructure. And this is a challenge, this whole challenge of permitting. When I say challenge, it's a challenge for internet service providers and states to try to ease the process of permitting rights of way, those kinds of things, because we want to get this money put to use as quickly as possible. We don't want it sitting there drowning in red tape related to permitting and access to rights of way. So that's what this module is about. Access to state and local rights of way and infrastructure. Following a subgrant award and prior to deploying infrastructure, subgrantees will need to secure permits from state and local governments for access to public rights of way and infrastructure, as well as complete reviews requested by the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and the National Historic Preservation Act, NHPA. And that's some additional stuff that the Biden administration put in here that is unfortunately going to increase the cost and complexity of getting this stuff done, but it is a requirement that's in the NOFO. So you need to consider those things. So I'm not going to read through all this stuff. Again, I showed you where you can get it in the description of the video, and you can see here they give you some various things to look into related to that topic. Then you've got module 2, achieving digital opportunity through BEAD grants. That's really about the extremely high cost per location threshold. So the digital opportunity here would be those locations that get left behind because they're really, really expensive to provide broadband to, and that really is going to be those areas that are just very remote. We've got very few customers, long distances, or challenging terrain, those kinds of things. So what is an extremely high cost per location threshold? The NOFO, the BEAD program, establishes the extremely high cost per location threshold. But really that threshold is going to be determined by the state. They're going to determine where that needs to be as far as the level, the percentage. The cost threshold is set by a state or territory above which the prioritization or preference for fiber project ceases, and the eligible entity may consider use of an alternate technology. So in other words, the goal of this of BEAD is for everybody to have reliable broadband, be able to get gigabit speeds, hopefully just from the start. But that would be fiber generally. But like I said, there could be really challenging locations where if you took all of the money that you had for a state and tried to do fiber across the board, you might not have enough money to hit every unserved and underserved location. And the goal is to make sure that every location can get good, reliable broadband, but it may not be gigabit symmetrical. You may have to do fixed wireless in some places. So where is that threshold or that cutoff where you're saying, you know what, we can't really do fiber here. We need to look at other alternative technologies. So you see here, the EHCT is the most relevant for determining whether and when to deploy fiber to locations in the hardest to reach places. There are going to be places where it's hard to reach and you say, you know what, it's below that threshold. We're going to go and do fiber here. There are going to be other places where it's going to be above the threshold. And you're going to then, again, look for an alternative technology. So again, more information about that in here. What are the most important factors to consider when setting that threshold? How can a state or territory establish a reasonable threshold? Those kinds of things. The challenge process. Again, this is something that states are having to do or are going to have to do as soon as they get their initial proposals out. They've got to get this challenge process going. And the whole point here is that we have much better data now on what locations can get broadband or should be able to have broadband, and then which ones do have broadband, which ones don't have broadband. So we have something called broadband serviceable locations, which would be every single structure in the United States that should have broadband. And then overlaid on top of that, that was part of the FCC and CostQuest creating the fabric that the map is based on. And then overlaid on top of that, we have data from broadband service providers that state whether or not, whether they do serve that broadband service location, and if they do, what their maximum advertised speeds are, is their latency under 100 milliseconds or less round trip, those kinds of things. So that is the broadband map. We know that it's not completely accurate. We know it's a lot better than it was from the first map that came out, and it's way better than it was when the broadband map was based on census tracts and not on individual locations. But there are still going to be issues where it's not completely accurate. So we need to make sure that we can challenge information about not which locations are serviceable, but are they getting service, and are they at the speeds advertised, those kinds of things. So you see here, since the first publication of the National Broadband Map in 2022, the accuracy map continues to improve. Even though it will remain a constant work in progress, that continues to improve through additional challenge processes. So there have been challenges already to this data, but now we're talking about a challenge process as part of the BEAD funding. This module of the playbook provides guidance on how to approach such challenge efforts by states and territories in the context of BEAD funding. You notice here it says state and territories cannot alter the broadband serviceable locations or the fabric in the BDC. They can only amend the status of those locations as being served, unserved, and underserved as set forth in the BDC. In other words, if you go to the broadband map and you see that there's a home that you know is supposed to be getting broadband, but it's not a serviceable location, you can't go in and say, you can't challenge that. That time has passed. It doesn't mean you can't build there. You have to build there. You have to take whatever funds you are getting through BEAD and build there, but you can't challenge it. And some of that could be just brand new homes that were in the process of being built while this broadband data collection process was going on. Some of it could just be locations that were missed. There's going to be a lot fewer of those from the first iteration of the broadband map because, again, challenges were able to be made as long as states and or service providers made those challenges. But at this point, you can't challenge a broadband serviceable location. You can only challenge those serviceable locations that say broadband services there. And then you can challenge, for example, maybe the type of broadband service that it says it gets. Maybe it says it's fiber and it's not. Maybe it says they can get gig and they can't. Those kinds of things can be challenged. As for the challenge process, states and territories are first to publish the list of challengeable locations. So the states have to do that. Then permissible challengers may submit a challenge to the status of a location, which shall include sufficient evidence. The entire process to be completed within 120 days once you kind of get that kicked off. And the permissible challengers would be broadband service providers, tribal entities, nonprofit community kinds of organizations. So you see more information about that. Module 4, there are 4 modules: cybersecurity and supply chain risk management under the BEAD program. This is very important. And by the way, I also linked in the description information about managed cybersecurity if you are an eligible entity or a potential subgrantee. And if you're a subgrantee, you need to have a cybersecurity plan in place prior to you turning up a funded network. And if you are a state, you need to make sure that you're eligible subgrantees or the subgrantees that you're going to be giving money to will attest to the fact that they have or will have that in place by the time they start operating that network. So this is very important. We can help with that. So I did link to that in the description as well if you want more information on that. So this again is cybersecurity and supply chain risk management. Again, the NOFO requires each eligible entity, that would be states or territories, to ensure that prospective subgrantees attest that they meet certain cybersecurity and supply chain risk management requirements. So the cybersecurity requirements would mean that you have your act together, meaning policies, procedures, passwords, kinds of things, training for employees to make sure they don't fall prey to phishing schemes and ransomware, those kinds of things. So you got to have all of that kind of knowledge and policies and procedures in place. You also need to have technology in place. Once you kind of lock down what the things that people can do, you need to consider what outside actors are doing. Sometimes those outside actors are attacking your folks with phishing and vishing schemes, those kinds of things. So that's why you have your people trained. But then also you got people trying to hack into the system, or if they do manage to, let's say, get access to employee's computer because they do fool that employee, you need to have systems that can maybe see that there's a behavior change, kind of automatically notify you or a security team that's watching this for you that something is amiss that needs to be looked into. So that all of that needs to be in place, and this is all part of the plan and the technology that you need to have in place to make sure that your network's secure. And this is important if you're an internet service provider. It's not just important to be able to do this so that you can get this funding. And by the way, this applies to anybody that's going to be looking at EHCT, enhanced ACAM. If you have been approved for that, you're going to need this as well, because that is a new requirement with enhanced ACAM where you have to have the same kind of cybersecurity plan in place. And you need to have that in place even sooner, because the deadline for having that is January 2nd, 2024, whereas I don't think we're going to be seeing any networks that are going to be starting to provide service on BEAD anywhere near that, right? So EACAM is even sooner than that. So what do you have here? So you got, again, the notice of funding opportunity, cybersecurity baseline requirements, the cybersecurity risk management plan in place that is either operational, if the prospective subgrantee is already providing service at the time of a grant, or ready to be ready to operate. What? Ready to be operationalized. That's hard to say. Wow. If the prospective subgrantee is not yet providing service at the time of the grant award. So you, again, prior to you operating this network, you need to have that in place. The plan reflects the latest version of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, framework for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity. So there is a specific NIST framework that you need to kind of reflect, and it's got certain categories that you need to make sure you meet. And again, this is really important, not just to meet these requirements to be able to get funding. It's important for your business. So it's really critical that you have cybersecurity in place, because once you get your broadband network operating, if you don't have this, if you were not to have this in place, then you could be attacked and you could be down for days, weeks. You could have customer data that's suddenly put out there on the dark web. So there's real risk for you as an operator if you're not doing this. That's one of the reasons that it's being required. Notice of funding opportunity, supply chain risk management, also baseline requirements. It talks about that. And again, so the first thing is you've got to get your act together, all of your procedures and policies in place, all of your technology in place to protect your network. But even if you do all of that, then you need to be considering who is connecting to your network, your supply chain that may be providing services to you where their insecurity could impact your good security. So if you have a outsourced IT provider, somebody that's providing services for you, somebody that's got access to your data or your network, you need to make sure that they have got these practices in place as well. So that's what that part is about. And it's got some recommendations for the eligible entities to support the prospective subgrantees, and it talks about that as well. So as the state or the territory, it's good if you can provide information to your potential subgrantees or your prospective subgrantees on what they can do. And again, if you click the link down there about cybersecurity, about great managed service, that's something that can help, because this is a big task, and most companies are not prepared to be able to set this up, or really, frankly, to manage it on an ongoing basis. And it requires ongoing management. So something like a security operations center as a service, where you've got an outside company that, again, it's in your supply chain. They need to make sure that they are secure, but being their security company, they should be. So you've got an outside company that is then providing advice for you on how to get all of your internal stuff in shape. They can't do it for you, but they can tell you what you need to do as far as all the training for employees and where your risks are. They can they can run a vulnerability assessment. They can check your systems and see if anything is vulnerable as far as the actual servers and whatnot. And then they can provide the technology that will keep those servers and endpoints secure, and also do 24/7 monitoring. So if something weird is coming up, not just a known virus pattern, but if behavior of a user's system suddenly is outside of what it normally would be, it's like something's not right here, and they can look into that. And it could be that somebody on your network, an employee, downloaded some kind of ransomware that is then searching around the network to see what it can lock down. You want to get on that right away, so you can have a third party do that for you. So that is probably the easiest and best way to do that, and the least expensive way to do that. Because otherwise, you got to set up a security team. You got to buy all the software and the hardware. And if you've got a managed service provider doing that, you don't have to buy all that stuff. Then you've got to have a team that then installs all of that. You got to have the equipment to install it on. You've got to then have a team that monitors that, and you can't just monitor it during the day. It's going to be monitored 24/7. Somebody's got to be looking at it all the time, because the bad actors there aren't, some of them don't sleep at night. That's when they're doing their thing, right? They like to do stuff in the dark. So anyway, check that out there. So that is this book, so you can go check that out. I linked to where you can get this. And then also you see our contact information here as well. So if we can help in any way, I've got a link again to the security information. But anything we can do for you, if you are a state or a potential subgrantee, and there are particular services that you're thinking, how are we going to provide this? Could be end user tech support. Well, we can do that for you. Or you're like, what? We need to provide voice on this network. How do we do that? Well, we can actually provide a hosted voice solution where you don't need the equipment. You don't need to have your own switch. You don't need to worry about phone numbers and E911 and all of that. And Kalia, we take care of all that for you. It's basically managed, hosted in the cloud service. IPTV, you want to offer that. I mentioned Kalia. We can do that, not just on voice, but just for your broadband network. That's a requirement. You have to have Kalia in place. All kinds of stuff. So check out our website. We can help, and we can make things go a lot faster for you if you are getting into the broadband business. That's how we got started back in the mid 90s, was helping companies get into the internet business, dial-up, right? We were a dial-up provider. We were helping people get in the dial-up internet business, and we were providing a lot of services that they didn't necessarily want to do, like tech support and like authentication of the devices and hosting email. We still do that. We still host email. Those kinds of things. And we progressed into broadband, starting with DSL and then cable modem service and fiber. So we've been doing this a long time, helping companies get in the internet business. And there was a long period of time there where we didn't have new entrants, but we're having new entrants now with a lot of this BEAD money coming in. So we can help you. If you're an existing provider or a brand new provider, we can definitely help you. So check us out right there. Thanks for joining me today. If this was helpful, if you give me a like in the video, I'd appreciate it. Just click the thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button. Ring the bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.